Privit, salut din Romania. So greetings from Bucharest. I evacuated here on Friday from Chernovtsi in Ukraine, and it's now, let me check the date, it's the 28th of February. It's the last day of February 2022, and it is day 5 of Russia's full-blown invasion of Ukraine. And I want to make this short video to explain how Putin's war on Ukraine is actually galvanizing the Ukrainian people. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of a really unified Ukrainian state and people. This is a unifying act, something that defines a nation, the fact that they have a very clear adversary and enemy at the moment, which is Russia. Unfortunately for Russians, that's the way it's turned out with this war, with Putin's decision to invade, have a full-blown invasion on 3 fronts of Ukraine. So you've probably seen some of the already iconic images of President Zelensky on the streets of Kiev, obviously the mayor of Kiev itself, Vitaly Klitschko, also the former president Petro Poroshenko out with a gun in his hand, ready to, man the barricades of Kiev and defend the city. These are all iconic images. These are nation-building images. And it's the direct opposite, obviously, of what Vladimir Putin wanted when he made this decision to invade. So it's pretty surreal to see how coming in and invading, trying to crush the country that Vladimir Putin does not believe has a right to exist. It doesn't exist in his speech. It's not allowed to be independent. It doesn't have legitimate borders. And what he's doing is actually helping the Ukrainians to consolidate and unify as a nation. So I just want to give you also a few examples that are personal anecdotes of people that I know in Ukraine and how this conflict has changed their attitude towards Russia and the Ukraine as a country. And obviously here you can see behind me some of the beautiful architecture in the center of Bucharest. A city I've been to many times, and I wasn't expecting to come back to in these circumstances so soon. So I have a friend from Odessa who's in fact Russian. She wasn't born there, and she's actually Russian, but she's been living for a very long time in the city in Ukraine, obviously in the south. Odessa Mama, one of my favorite places. And before this full-blown invasion, in spite of the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and in spite of Russia supporting these separatists in the east of the country, in Donbass, and the fighting that's gone on that claimed already the lives of about 14,000 Ukrainians in Donbass since 2014, she has still had a positive image of Vladimir Putin as a president of Russia, because she goes and she visits it pretty regularly. And she thought, well, would life be so bad if Odessa became Russia, right? If Ukraine just got absolved into Russia or rejoined kind of the Russian sphere of influence that it's been trying to get away from as a country, at least since 2014. And, I was looking at her Instagram post and just how outraged she is by the invasion, how personally offended and attacked she feels, and just how suddenly she is incredibly pro-Ukrainian and the idea of being Ukrainian. It's the complete opposite, obviously, of what Russia's military commanders and politicians would have expected. I don't know if they were expecting to be greeted with people cheering, giving them flowers, greeting them as liberators, since that's the narrative that Vladimir Putin has tried to create for, domestic consumption, domestic propaganda, is that they're going there to free the Ukrainians from freedom, as far as I can see. He's claiming they're going to be denazified and get to choose their own leaders. Complete rubbish, the whole thing. Very weak propaganda, because it's like anyone who's ever been to Ukraine would just laugh at it. But I guess that's for domestic consumption. So there you go. Someone who's actually even born in Russia and goes there regularly has now flipped completely their opinion, because he's taken this decision to invade the country, or have an extended invasion of Ukraine. That is obviously even also threatening now her hometown, Odessa Mama. I saw the images. They were reminiscent of 1941 and the defense of Odessa, the siege of Odessa when Nazi Germany and actually Romania was in the Axis collaborating with the Nazis. They invaded Odessa, the city, and occupied it. It's actually a Romanian occupation. Same image, juxtaposed with how they have the sandbags around the Opera House in Odessa now defended against a Russian attack. Something that would have been unbelievable when I first came to Ukraine, that Russia would attack such an historic and beautiful city, which the majority of people actually speak Russian as their first language. So that is anecdote number one. Anecdote number two, I have a friend and his partner is from a town that just got seized by the Russians, one of the very few towns that has been seized so far, and that is Enohedar, I think is how you pronounce it, and it's there on the Dnieper River. And you know, the reports from the cities, because the internet is still working in Ukraine, communications are still up, which really shocks me, because that was one of the main reasons I wanted to get out, is I was fearing that I wasn't going to be able to vlog and communicate with you at all when in the event of a war. So we got all the information out, and basically the Russian troops who are now in control of the city have started effectively looting. So they've robbed bank, they're robbing shops, they're commandeering people's houses, kicking them out because they didn't have fuel or food or really have any clue where they were going, apparently, because I don't even understand why they chose that town. It doesn't look to me to be the most strategic from Melitopol to go up there. I really don't know unless there's some other plan that they have. But think about the reaction of the local people. I already saw some clips on, been sent out through Telegram, that locals have gone to the town hall where there are obviously the armored personnel carriers and the Russian soldiers, and they're standing outside, unarmed civilians, singing the Ukrainian national anthem, making it clear they want them to get the hell back out. They're not welcome. They look like a group of bandits basically trying to loot the place. Well, to be clear, I haven't gone around smashing up the entire town and looting everything, but you can see, right, this is not the way that you get the locals on your side if you're invading to liberate them. So the complete opposite. And these kind of events are, as I said, nation building. They're going to unify the people around being one common idea that Russia is a big threat. Even if they speak Russian as their first language, even if they have family members on the other side, even if their parents are Russian, they're going to have this unifying narrative of them versus, the inside group against the outside group, which is Russia. So it's pretty tragic for Russians to have to watch this. I feel also bad for Russians and Belarusians who most, I don't think, are in favor of this war whatsoever, have to watch all this clownishness from especially leaders like Lukashenko. And Putin looks demented and mad at this stage, even suggesting that he needs to get his nuclear forces ready. I know there's, again, more brinkmanship, but I thought, I couldn't decide before whether it was, in the previous videos, whether it was brinkmanship and he was just a really good actor or he's just gone a bit mad. And it looks increasingly like that's the conclusion, that he has gone a bit mad. So a unifying narrative is really important, and sometimes you can flip people like we've seen in these very extreme situations. I remember just in my home country, Ireland, that there was an uprising in 1916 that was not popular. They basically tried to kick out the British government, to simplify it, and took over buildings in Dublin, and the centre got wrecked when the British took it back by shelling the centre of the capital of Ireland. And whilst people in general were not in favour of actual independence, they wanted more autonomy in general at that time, because of this failed uprising, which was unpopular, the British then started to crack down very heavily on Ireland and the Irish people. And as a result, in the next elections that they had, it flipped and a pro-independence party became extremely popular. So these kind of extreme situations when there's kind of a lot of violence, an invasion, or a crackdown can flip people from being, maybe they were a bit, well, maybe not exactly pro-British, but a lot of the people were fine with staying in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland at the time, and it flipped them and they wanted independence. So we're seeing that same national identity been really, I think, developed here as a result of Putin's war. It's no longer going to be East versus West, Russian speakers versus Ukrainian speakers. I think you're going to see a lot more unification of the country, and going forward, if Ukraine does survive which is not clear, unfortunately, at this point. And I really have to say kudos to the Ukrainian military for their incredible bravery and success on the battlefield against all the odds, against all the expectations. They've done incredibly well. We're on day 5. I'm sure Vladimir Putin thought that Ukraine would no longer exist with its current government by day 2 or 3, probably. And we're on day 5. Whilst things are very tough in Kiev, it looks like it's being surrounded at the moment. And I really feel very bad for the people who are there. Especially, and I have friends who are in Kiev and also in other cities like Kherson and Mykolaiv. And things are very grim looking at the moment. But they have held out against all, against all the odds against what is supposed to be, I think, the world's third biggest, most professional military. Just my deep respect. And on top of that, you have the images of the citizens of cities like Kiev and Odessa putting together Molotov cocktails to resist the Russian troops if they enter the city, making it absolute hell for them. I've been watching Telegram a lot of, obviously the videos of people sending from the battlefield. In lots of cities that I've been to, seeing them wrecked, seeing them shelled, seeing strewn military vehicles and dead soldiers. It's all terrible. And unfortunately, this is the reality, the horror of war. But Putin has galvanized the Ukrainian people. And I will be trying to do some interviews live with people I know who are there in those cities in the coming days. So I'm going to put up maybe a little bit of a timetable, so watch out for those in the coming day or so. And in the meantime, Slava Ukraina! Heroям slava!